Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing super well. Thank you all so much for being here. Today we're going to be talking about the very tragic case of 21-year-old Valentina Trespalacios and how she was found inside a suitcase in a dumpster, and how the last person that she was with blocked her entire family on social media and fled the country. This case involves toxic behavior in relationships, and I do want to include some resources down below if you or anyone you know is going through domestic violence. What happened to Valentina is just so heartbreaking and just so inhumane. Like, you have to be truly evil to just leave someone in a dumpster. This is a very difficult case to talk about, but it's also very important to spread awareness on this very serious topic, and there's a lot of information to go over. So with that, let's jump right in and let's talk about what happened to Valentina. Valentina Trespalacios Hidalgo was born on December 16, 2001 to her mother Laura and to her father Giovanni in Bogota, Colombia. Laura and Giovanni had two children together, Valentina, and then she also had her older brother Daniel Felipe, but the pair eventually separated and Laura entered a new relationship, giving Valentina and Daniel two younger siblings. They were very close to their mother, but their relationship with their father was like pretty much non-existent. Valentina's early life was marked by significant financial struggles. Her mom Laura worked tirelessly as a house cleaner to provide for her children and to ensure that they had food and like the bare necessities. Despite her efforts, money was often really tight and there really wouldn't be any leftover money to take trips or for like extra activities, to go to the movie theater or even to restaurants. Daniel says his mom was like the backbone of the family. She was always fighting for their well-being and handling all of the household responsibilities on her own. Through her example, both he and Valentina learned the importance of hard work, and they had dreams of one day helping out their mother. You know, they were exhausted seeing her work so hard and clean all of these houses just to barely have enough money to fund their life, and they knew that they wanted to grow up and just help the mom and just kind of take a load off her back. When Valentina got older, she began going out with friends to clubs, you know, just being like a typical young person, and during one of these outings she met an older businessman named Pablo Silva. They really hit it off. They became like really good friends, and Pablo says that right away he saw how much ambition Valentina had. She shared with him her dream of becoming a DJ, and seeing her determination and just her passion that she had, Pablo offered to fund her music production studies at one of Colombia's top DJ academies. Pablo saw so much potential in her, and he eventually became not only her manager, but also her romantic partner. He was helping her book like all of these gigs, and she was slowly making a name for herself in the DJ world. She was performing all over Colombia at the best clubs or music festivals, and she even started to perform like all around the world. So she was performing in Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and Peru. She just dreamt of like filling her passport with stamps from all over the world. She was doing absolutely amazing in the DJ world. She began to grow a large social media following, and in 2019, she actually won a prize at the Colombian Dance Award.
TV, Miami.tv.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Feliz de tenerte con nosotros. Bueno, Valentina es una de las mejores DJs que encontramos en Cartagena y empezó a tocar hace poquito. Cuéntanos un poquito la experiencia.
Bueno, hace 8 meses aproximadamente inicié con mi carrera. Me apasiona mucho la música y pues me he venido destacando en muy buenos eventos durante el periodo.
¿Cómo empezaste? ¿Cómo fue la idea? ¿Dijiste algún día voy a empezar a tocar? Bueno, cuéntanos un poquito.
Un día me metí a averiguar lo de la academia, me metí a estudiar, hice el curso, practiqué y ya y hasta perder el miedo, porque es más de, bueno, y haces algo, pero ahora salir al público, salir a mostrarle a la gente qué es lo que tienes, el talento y eso.
She started to make like really good money, and she was able to help her mom out, which again was like her dream. She just always wanted to be there for her mom and kind of just take over things. So now she was helping out her mom. She would take out her siblings to restaurants, to the movies, and just like do things that weren't possible before. Her brother says that Valentina took her job as a DJ very seriously. Yes, she enjoyed going out and, you know, having fun, but when it was a work event, she would go do her job and then she would leave, saying that if she were to stay each and every time after she finished her DJ set to drink or socialize, she would just be spending money which she could be saving. Not only was she focusing on her work as a DJ, but she was also focusing on her schoolwork. She began studying international trade and business, and she wanted to further grow for the sake of her family, and she had hopes of buying a house for her mother one day. So she was really busy and she was working really hard. Her older brother Daniel remembers Valentina telling him that he should also start saving some some money and that he should also be working very hard for their future and also to help out their mom because if they did, God would bless them. So things were going good in nearly all aspects of her life. She was watching her dreams happen right in front of her, but as for her romantic life, Pablo says that they ended up separating after nearly 4 years of dating and after even going through the pandemic together. One of the main reasons why they separated was because of the age difference. So he was 20 years older than her, and I mean, that's a pretty big age gap. I mean, Valentina was really young, so I believe at this point when she broke up with him, she was like 19 or 20 years old. So I feel like that's a really young age to be dating someone 20 years older than you. Pablo spoke out and said, quote, "She wanted to explore other things, see the world. I travel to my festivals all over the world, and she traveled 3 times a week for her performances. So we saw each other twice a month, and that deteriorated the relationship. Now, despite their breakup, they remained cordial and they kept in contact every once in a while." Somewhere around March, April of 2022, Valentina met a 34-year-old man named John Nelson Poulos on a dating app. John was immediately attracted to Valentina. I mean, after all, she was incredibly beautiful. The two hit it off and they began talking more and more. Now, before we continue talking about the relationship, let's take a step back and let's talk about John. John Nelson was born on May 19th, 1987. Now, there's been some different reporting as to what he did for a living, but the majority of the articles state that he was in the world of like finance and investments and things like that. In 2009, he married a woman he met all the way back in high school, who for the sake of the video, we're gonna call her Sarah. So John and Sarah were together for a very long time. They eventually got married. They had 3 kids together and they lived in Wisconsin. When their oldest son, who we'll call Mike, was 4 years old, he was actually diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of cancer. It was an incredibly difficult time for the family. The challenges of caring for a child with a very serious illness while also attending to the needs of their other children and just taking care of themselves must have been so incredibly overwhelming for Sarah and John. It was a period filled with just so much uncertainty and just so much fear as to what was going to happen to their little boy. This diagnosis was a devastating blow to the family, and it basically thrusted them into a whirlwind of hospital visits, medical treatments, and just very expensive medical bills. Thankfully, however, they did receive tremendous support from their community via GoFundMe, and a local church even helped them with a silent auction to further raise more money for the family. In total, I believe they received approximately $60,000. This was made through 497 donations, and their son Mike was able to receive treatment for this very aggressive illness. In January of 2018, Mike was honored as a guest at the State of the Union, where U.S. House Speaker Paul Ryan praised 6-year-old Mike for overcoming this very rare form of cancer, and he announced that Mike had received a clear scan. It was such heartwarming news for the entire community. The family appeared just very united and strong, often attending church together, and John appeared as if he was like the ultimate family man. But despite this moment of hope and happiness, the family was facing serious struggles behind the scenes. John was actually abusive to Sarah. She revealed via her social media the emotional and just manipulative abuse that she endured and shared examples of John's controlling and just demeaning behavior. Her post shares are just like really powerful insight into what she experienced and just kind of shows the kind of person that John truly is. Now, I'll share some parts of her post because her words are deeply impactful and they just really stuck with me. Sarah wrote, quote, "When you spend days on end in the hospital with a deathly sick 4-year-old and a newborn attached to you, only to come home to, when are you going to start taking care of your own goddamn family?" Referring to the meals that were being brought by our friends. When you order pizza, asking 3 times to make sure the toppings are what he wants, the crust is right, the price is acceptable, only to get it home and what the F, how much was it? Maybe I should have asked again. I'm not very good at doing things correctly anyways, right? When you're told to get the F out of this house if you can't be a godly wife, only to leave and then be told you're taking it all and destroying the family and are acting as a selfish C word. So those are just a couple of, parts of the statements that she has made. And again, that's just very, very frightening that she had to go through that she had to be so precise about the pizza that she ordered for him. Otherwise, that would just set him off. It's very, very frightening and just very intense words from Sarah. And to top it all off, before Sarah had the chance to officially file for divorce, John actually fled Wisconsin in January of 2021. He emptied his family's bank accounts and he left the country to evade legal accountability, abandoning Sarah and their 3 children. Sarah elaborated about what what exactly happened, and she wrote, quote, "When you drive, shaking and crying to the attorney's office to file for divorce, only to learn that he's left the state using your credit cards and all the money's been wired to offshore accounts. When you get pictures and threatening messages saying, 'I'm 100% protected and they don't extradite people for this stuff,' only to realize he fled the country to escape any enforcement of US laws." So yeah, John left his wife and his 3 children with all of the family's money. It's just absolutely horrible. Sarah said that after that, she was now only going to focus on reclaiming herself, creating a sense of normalcy for the children, and just helping them heal from this trauma. She emphasized that abuse isn't always physical, it often involves manipulation that distorts your sense of reality. She ended the post saying that behind all of the perfect social media posts, you never really know what is actually going on in someone's life. She urged other victims of abuse to seek help and said, while you can't do it alone, there are many people who will support you in finding peace and joy again. After John left, he went on to live in several European countries such as Cyprus, Turkey, Ukraine, and Colombia, and then he began establishing a residence in Texas. Sarah filed for divorce and demanded child support, but John didn't pay it. Now, in an interview with John later on, he claimed that it was Sarah who wouldn't give him the information needed to deposit her child support money. He said that Sarah had frozen his US bank account, so he planned to pay her from his overseas account. However, he needed a SWIFT code, which is like a banking detail for international transfers, to send the money. But he says again that Sarah never gave him that information, so that's why he didn't pay it. So we're not really sure, about all the details surrounding the child support payments. I feel like I'm probably leaning towards more like what Sarah is saying as being the truth. But regardless, John left this huge mess behind for this family to figure out and to move past. And now he was off doing his own thing, living a luxurious lifestyle and traveling while his family was back at home struggling. Now, this brings us back to how he met Valentina on a dating app. But dating apps weren't the only thing that John used. He was also a very frequent client for a webcam girl and just kind of those like companion websites. So he spent a lot of time on them. He would spend hours on there actually, and he even paid for personal interactions with the girls. His alias on these websites was the Magic Man, and according to the testimony of one of the webcam girls, she said, quote, "The guy was a heavy consumer of adult content website. He would log in and pay by the minute for almost 5 or 6 hours. He was very imaginative, always telling stories, but sometimes he would act like a true gentleman. It was very strange." Just hearing that is so incredibly disturbing. Like, the fact that he was paying to talk to these girls for like 5 or 6 hours and was paying minute by minute is just ridiculous. Now, going back to Valentina and John meeting, like I said, they really hit it off and they began talking more and more every single day, and John decided that he wanted to kind of take things a step further, and he suggested that they meet in person, and he even offered to cover any lost income from her taking time off work to go take a trip with him. He was trying to make it easier for her to say yes. Now, Valentina was open to the idea. After all, at first, John seemed like very charming, and he seemed like very kind to her, and of course, she had no idea about his abusive behavior back in the United States. Although John did tell her that he was going through a divorce and that he did have 3 kids, of course, he left out the part where he was abusive and like basically left them behind to fend for themselves. So Valentina had no idea any of that had happened. She was still feeling kind of like wary about meeting this man that she had never met and kind of meeting him on like a random vacation. You know what I mean? Like her senses kind of came up and she was like, you know what, maybe it's not the best idea to just go take a trip with him. So she suggested that he should be the one to travel to Colombia first. That way they could meet first in her hometown where her family is and just kind of get, more comfortable, since again, she didn't really know him and just wanted to kind of be smart and safe. John agreed to this plan. He said, okay, perfect. I will go to Colombia, no strings attached. And again, this would just be a way for them to see if they actually did want to take things further or not. So John traveled to Bogota to meet her. They had dinner together, and the following day they traveled to Cancun, Mexico. This was in May of 2022, and Valentina agreed to going to Cancun with John to celebrate his birthday together. According to friends, this 10-day trip was like really amazing for Valentina. She saw how well John treated her and thought that he could really change her life, and told her friends that it was like she had found her Prince Charming. After this trip, their relationship remained virtual, and by August, John was still showering her with affection, with gifts, with monetary support, and just kind of like love bombing style messages. But it didn't take long for John's true nature to surface, revealing the toxic, belittling, and manipulated side of him that his ex Sarah had endured for years. He became possessive, insecure, and just increasingly jealous. In September, John had returned to Colombia again. He he surprised Valentina with an apartment that he rented via Airbnb, and they would stay there and they would go to all of these outings in Bogota. So they went like horseback riding and to dinners, and this time John was meeting Valentina's friends during this trip, and he even met her family one night at dinner. John appeared to be a gentleman during the dinner, and despite the language barriers, he would use translation apps to communicate with Laura, Valentina's mom. He actually reassured Laura by saying, quote, "Don't be afraid of me, I have good intentions for your daughter," which seemed to calm any concerns or nerves that Laura had, because of course this is just like a random man from the US that's coming to date your daughter all the way in Colombia. I feel like it's normal to feel concerned and kind of nervous about the situation. So after this visit, John went back to the United States and Valentina stayed in Colombia recovering from a surgery that John had funded. He had actually given her money for a breast augmentation surgery, and she underwent the procedure in October. Valentina's former boyfriend, Pablo Silva, saw that Valentina suddenly was purchasing nicer things, and she had like a brand new phone and just like all these new purses and things like that, and now the breast augmentation, and he kind of questioned like where these funds were coming from. He didn't believe that Valentina could cover the cost of a breast augmentation all on her own, as that's like a very costly procedure. He said he knew that all the money that she made from DJing, she would save it and just kind of use it for her family and for her mom, so she certainly wouldn't be using that money for like a cosmetic surgery. And this made him think that while John had positioned himself as this like romantic and caring partner, the reality was that his extravagant financial support could be a way of exerting control over Valentina. It made Pablo kind of question things a little bit and kind of just keep an eye on Valentina, and he even asked her if she was okay, and she said yes, that she was okay, that she was happy, and that things were going great. Now, the reason he was checking up on his ex is because, again, they ended their relationship on a very good note. They kind of, in a way, remained friends after, and, Pablo just really cared about Valentina and just wanted to make sure that she was okay. But as John and Valentina's relationship continued, John became increasingly toxic. John questioned Valentina's loyalty, even accusing her of seeing other men. He would ask her who each man was that she followed on social media. He wanted to approve what she posted and thought that she had all these lovers, and demanded photos and videos of almost everything that she did or wherever she went to, so that he could see that there wasn't another man with her. Just to further show his mindset, I'll include a screenshot of John's last retweet on Twitter. It read, quote, "My girl swears she not like these other B-word. Alright, unlock your phone then." John went as far as hiring a private investigator to look into Valentina's whereabouts and to follow her when she went to her DJ sets or just out in general, and in one of those followings in November of 2022, the PI discovered that Valentina took a trip with another man. According to one of Valentina's friends, Silvana, Valentina actually had another relationship with another man at the same time that she was dating John. This man was named Santiago Luna Bonilla. He was very different from John, who presented himself as a man who could take care of her and who would give her stability, whereas on the other hand, as much as she enjoyed being with Santiago, he was different and their relationship was unstable and they were kind of just like on and off. So who is Santiago? He is a businessman and investor who works in the cannabis industry. He has a lot of followers on social media and he kind of portrays himself as someone with quite the luxurious lifestyle. His profile has photos of him in like places like Dubai, Brazil, and Paris, as well as pictures with luxury cars and expensive clothing. According to his testimony and of Valentina's friends, they had been in a relationship since mid-October of 2021. They had been together for a year and 3 months, but had broken up in January of 2022 and then rekindled things that November. Silvana said, quote, "Valentina and Santiago were deeply in love." But Santiago also noticed Valentina's new lifestyle. He was suspicious of how she got money to undergo breast augmentation surgery and said, "I did ask her where she got the money from, and she said that she charged 300,000 pesos or 400,000 pesos for her DJ sets in Bogota, and when she did sets out of Bogota, they paid her more. She told me that she had saved up that money, and that's how she paid for her surgery." Now, I don't think that Santiago knew about John. I think she was dating both of them at the same time, which of course is not great. Now, going back to the trip that Valentina took with Santiago, Silvana says that in November of 2022, Valentina asked her for help to prevent John from finding out that she was on a trip with another man. She said that John was going to deposit Valentina $1,000 for like personal expenses, but that since Valentina had gone to Aruba with Santiago, she didn't know how to keep John from realizing that she wasn't there to receive the money. So Valentina told him that she had a gig out of town and that she told him that she could wire the money to her friend Silvana Silvana and that then Silvana would send it to her. So John believed her. John sent Silvana the money through like a MoneyGram type of program, and that was it. So yes, there was definitely some sketchy things going on, and after the PI showed John proof of Valentina's infidelity, John confronted Valentina and told her that he knew everything. He also showed her a photo of her during one of her DJ sets in Cartagena, where she appeared to be touching another man's leg, and he kind of used that to further prove, like, look, you're cheating on me. John went into a crazy jealousy fit. He thought that Valentina was using him for money and to fund her trips with other men. Valentina told her mom that John hired a PI and how she thought that was really, really weird, and the family thought that this would probably just end the relationship. You know, hearing that John hired a private investigator to spy on her, and on top of all of the toxic behavior towards her, Valentina decided to end the relationship and she removed John from social media. But John wasn't going to let her do that. He swayed her back into his arms by sending her gifts and saying that they could get an apartment together and live together in Bogota, and that they could even marry each other and just start a family together and have a fresh start. And Valentina accepted. She forgave him in late December, early January, and that was it. John said that he would be arriving on January 20th, 2023, so that they could start their new life together. But when January came along, John arrived one day earlier. He made a connection in Atlanta and he arrived on January 19th in the late afternoon. And according to the driver who picked him up, he said that John made constant remarks during the ride, which was like really weird. Like, for example, like he says John asked him if he liked foreign women and then showed him a photo on his phone of a completely naked woman who he says appeared Russian. So he was like, that was just really weird. Like, you don't just talk about like sexual like that with your Uber driver. He also asked the driver if he knew where he could buy substances. Now, from the minute he landed, it was evident that he had ulterior motives, starting with the fact that John told Valentina they would be settling down together, and again, he mentioned like getting married and starting a family and living together and all of this stuff, but yet he only packed enough clothes for 4 days. He also only rented his car for 3 days, which he rented the day after arriving in Bogota. According to testimony of a worker at the car rental agency, when asked what John was in Colombia for, he replied with, quote, "I have a girlfriend here and I know she is cheating." And then he showed the worker a photo of Valentina. Now, again, this was really odd for the worker to be hearing this. Like, that's just not like a normal thing to say. So just to recap, John arrives one day earlier. He only rented the car for 3 days. And then to top it off, he rented the Airbnb for only 4 days, which he arrived to at almost 9 p.m. that same night. So did John truly have plans to stay for the long run? Like, was he really there to have a future with Valentina and to marry her? Or was he just there to get revenge on her? Now, just a quick note, there were some conflicting reports regarding the Airbnb. Some say that John had the option of renting the Airbnb month to month, like to actually live there, while the majority of articles say that he rented it only for those 4 days. So John is here a day earlier than agreed, and he called Valentina and told her all of this, but Valentina was already out. She was with a friend, which was Santiago, and she told John that she didn't know he was going to be arriving a day earlier, and since he didn't inform her of this, she couldn't just drop everything to go see him. John got angry and began accusing her of ditching him to go out and being with another man, and Valentina told him, "Who said I'm going to a party? I made a video call to you. I'm with Manuela at her house. We went to a cannabis conference and that's it." To which John replied with, "Okay." And then Valentina told him that she would see him tomorrow just like they had agreed to, and reiterated that before seeing him, she had to go to a couple of appointments. So she had to go get her nails done and get eyelash extensions and things like that. She said that after that, she would go back home, pack her belongings, and then they would see each other just like they had already planned. But this is when things got kind of weird. According to video surveillance that same night, John exited the apartment and he went down to the lobby at around 11:20 p.m. Just 5 minutes later, he comes back up to the apartment with a woman. They enter the apartment, and at 12:56 in the morning, this woman leaves. So who is this woman? We have no idea. Was this someone that he just met online and decided to invite over to like spend his time with since Valentina was busy? We're not really sure if authorities were able to even locate her, or if they did and they're just not releasing that information publicly. I wasn't able to find any information on that. So yeah, that's what John was up to that night. He was hanging out with an unknown woman. Valentina, on the other hand, like I said, was with Santiago. He testified that Valentina was with him on Wednesday the 18th, Thursday Saturday the 19th and the morning of Friday the 20th. He said that her demeanor changed on the 19th, which is when John arrived. She looked uneasy, she kept declining phone calls, she kept declining messages. She had her phone actually connected to the car's Bluetooth so Santiago could see anytime someone called her. And he could see her continue to ignore all of the phone calls, and she was just really annoyed at this, and she just kept saying like someone else connect their phone to the Bluetooth. Santiago then says that on Friday the 20th, the day her and John were supposed to meet to finally live together, she told Santiago that she was done packing and that she was gonna go move out. And Santiago offered to help her move her things, but she declined the help. Santiago tried asking more information about who she was moving in with, since again, he had no idea John was in Colombia or that they were like together. So he continued questioning her like, who are you moving in with? And Valentina told Santiago like a couple of different versions. She at first said that she was gonna go move in with some friends. Then she said that she was gonna go live alone, which is why she wanted a cat to keep her company. And then she said that her friend Silvana would be staying with her for a couple of months. She told him that she would show him the apartment on Monday once everything was unpacked and organized. So all of this vagueness and just kind of changing her story made Santiago feel a little bit sketched out. So let's get to Valentina's point of view. It's Friday, January 20th, and Valentina meets up with John at her house to gather her belongings so they can finally, move into the Airbnb that John rented and begin their new life together. This was at around 6:10 p.m. In the car on the way to her new life with John, Valentina recorded a video for her mom. Little did Valentina know that this video would become one of the final memories her family would have of her while she was still alive. In the video, Valentina is smiling next to John and she tells him to say hi to her mom, and then she tells her mom, "We're heading home, Mom. Check out the bags," as she shows the car all packed up. Then at around 7:18 p.m., they are seen on video surveillance entering the Airbnb with all of Valentina's things. At around 9 p.m., Valentina is seen on surveillance leaving the Airbnb for a few minutes to go down to the lobby to pick up some substances. She is seen leaving without her coat or purse and then quickly returning. Now, they planned on using these substances before heading out to a nightclub called Nexus later that night. According to John, Valentina and him consumed the substances, and then at one point, Valentina was like cutting lemons and limes with a knife while they drank Don Julio tequila. They also went to a sushi restaurant for like 2 or 3 hours, and then they returned to the Airbnb. They were intimate upon returning, and they were still up, so now it was technically Saturday, January 21st. Then at around 3 o'clock in the morning, they ordered a car through an app, which is kind of like Uber, called InDriver, and they ordered this like Uber so that they could go to the DJ set that Valentina was scheduled to do at a club. Now, the strange thing is that when the driver arrived to pick them up, Valentina was the first person to get into the car. He testified, quote, "When she got in the car, before he got in," referring to John, "she let out a scream and said, 'Oh, why did I write that?' And then she tells me, 'Look, I wrote in the in-driver support, help, I'm in danger.' I then asked her if she was okay. And before he could get her to elaborate on this message, she supposedly sent by mistake, John entered the car. The driver said that they were talking normally until John asked him if he spoke English, to which the driver replied yes, and then John no longer spoke out loud, and the driver could tell that he began messaging Valentina. So that was a really weird interaction that stuck out to the driver. It seems like Valentina did write, 'Help, I'm in danger,' on purpose to let the driver know that she needed help, but then pretended that it was an accident. That way John wouldn't catch on. So they get to the club at around 3:50 in the morning, and Valentina does her DJ set, and John doesn't leave her side. He is right next to her the entire time. When Valentina finishes her set, they both go down to the club owner's office with a few other people to kind of chat for a bit, to drink a little bit more, to continue doing some substances, and for Valentina to get her money for the set that she just performed. After this, Valentina and John arrived back at the Airbnb at around 6:51 in the morning. According to Silvana, she said Valentina messaged her saying John had a really bad reaction to the substances and that he was acting crazy. At 7:42 a.m., Valentina texted Santiago, "Good morning, baby, have an excellent day." But since Santiago was kind of like annoyed at her from all the vagueness about moving out and who she was moving out with and all of that, he just didn't reply to her. It wasn't until later when he saw a story that Valentina posted that he he messaged her. Now, she had posted a photo at dinner from the night before, and Santiago asked her who she was with at this dinner. And Valentina told him that she was with her friends. But since she didn't post any of the friends that she was with like she usually does when she goes out to dinner or like hangs out with them, Santiago got a little bit sketched out, and Valentina kind of snapped at him and just brought up how he was also recently out with female friends, so she could also go out with male friends too. And then Santiago just kind of replied with like a hand emoji. I'm not sure if it was like the waving emoji, but Valentina replied with, that's how it's gonna be. And that was the last time that Santiago spoke to her. He left her on red. A few days before, she did tell him that she needed to tell him something very important and that she didn't know how he was going to take it. Now, it's speculated that she was probably going to tell him that they could no longer see each other, or that she was seeing another man, or something along those lines, but we're not really sure. Now, going back to Valentina and John, they weren't seen on video surveillance until around 12 p.m. when John went down to the lobby to pick up some food that they had ordered. They basically stayed in the entire day. John said that they did more substances, that they had more intimate time, and just kind of drank some more. Later throughout the day, at around 9 p.m., Valentina spoke with a friend via video chat and told her that they didn't really have any plans for the day because she was really tired from the night before. At 10:43 p.m., John goes out to get another food delivery that they had ordered, and Valentina is seen for the last time alive on camera. She stepped out for a quick moment while John was waiting for the elevator. Back inside, she later had a video chat with her younger brother, who even spoke to John briefly. This was the last contact that Valentina had with any of her family members. Valentina's brother, Daniel Felipe, said, quote, "On Saturday night, my mom said she got a message from her that said, 'Mom, life isn't easy. Everything has a price.' My mom didn't take that as a sign that he was treating her badly. She reassured her that she didn't need to give us anything, that she had already given us so much. After that, my mom didn't talk to her again. It was my little brother who spoke with her around midnight on Saturday." Unfortunately, the following day, on Sunday, January 22nd at around 3:30 p.m., Valentina's body was found inside a street-side dumpster very close to the Bogota airport. The dumpster was in a park where children play. There was a basketball court. There were houses nearby. I mean, this park was filled with people. A homeless person who actually collected recyclables for money was the one who opened the dumpster and saw a female head coming out of the blue luggage, which was wrapped with black duct tape. He said it shocked him terribly, and he went straight to report it to the authorities. When police arrived, they were able to determine Valentina's identity because some of her belongings were actually with her, including her school identification. Her body was taken right away for an autopsy, and the autopsy's main findings were, it was just really, really intense. I'm going to go through some of the main findings that they found, but she had 5 marks on the front of her neck showing where pressure was applied. She had bruises on her neck muscle and the cartilage in her throat. She had bruises in the inside of her lips and under her tongue, a bruise on the large neck muscle on the right side, bleeding on the right side of her tongue, scratch-like marks near her jaw and nose, likely caused by fingernails. She had no broken bones in her throat or her neck. She had bruises under the scalp in several areas, and then she also had tiny red dots in her lungs, which are signs of asphyxiation. She also had swelling in her brain, and her face showed severe swelling and congestion, which is consistent with strangulation or asphyxiation. There were also signs of multiple blunt force injuries on her forearms and on her lower back/pelvic area. So this was really, really intense. Valentina went through a lot before her death. Her official cause of death was asphyxiation, and it was most likely caused by some type of plastic, like a rope or like a string or something of that similar nature. Before she was strangulated, however, she was violently beaten. She had marks and bruises all over her body, like I said, all over her chest, her arms, her back, from where John used his own fist to beat her before he asphyxiated her. It's just absolutely terrible to think of what Valentina went through in her final moments. Now, later that day, the news of Valentina's death and the manner in which she was discovered began circulating all over social media and all over just the news media. In fact, there were even rumors that Valentina had been chopped into pieces, but that was quickly shut down by authorities, and Valentina's ex-boyfriend, Pablo Silva, was the one who actually called Laura to deliver the terrible and just tragic news. Laura was in shock. She told Pablo to not make jokes like that, like that's a really bad thing to joke about, but Pablo was like, "I'm not joking, it's true, like Valentina's dead." Laura just couldn't believe it. Her daughter had been posting statuses to her social media the night before. She even messaged her, so she didn't understand how things just looked so normal the night before, and now she was being told that her daughter was found inside a dumpster. It was just nightmare. She actually tried calling Valentina because she was like, no, there's no way, like, you got the wrong person, this isn't my daughter, and she kept calling and calling Valentina, but of course, received no answer. Then she tried calling John because, again, she knew that she had just moved in with John and that he was probably the last person to see her. So she kept calling John over and over again, but he wasn't answering either. She then asked her sons to help her find John on social media so she could contact him through there, but that's when they realized that John blocked all of them on social media and had deactivated his Instagram account. This was a moment that they went straight to the police to tell them that the last person Valentina was with her boyfriend John, and that John had blocked all of them, that he was nowhere to be found, and that he had very toxic tendencies towards Valentina, and that now Valentina was dead. Like, they knew it was him. Valentina's mom begged John to turn himself in. She said, quote, "Tell me why you threw her in that horrible trash can. I gave you my daughter. Wherever you are, if you have any humanity, I ask you to turn yourself in and explain why you killed her. You can't have peace of mind. I can't believe you keep living as if nothing happened. You took the life of a beautiful woman in such a horrible and chilling way. I hope justice is served and that the national government helps me clarify this case. It's not fair that a foreigner comes in and deceives a Colombian girl and ends up like this. I hope this case doesn't go unpunished. If he was jealous of something, it was because she was such a beautiful and smiley girl. But he shouldn't have harmed her. He should have just walked away. He didn't seem like an aggressive person. He was very calm. He became very obsessed with my daughter." Valentina's uncle, Carlos, also spoke out and said, quote, "What we do know for sure is that as a family, the last person we knew Valentina was with while she was alive was him. As soon as Valentina's body was found, her mother and siblings tried to contact him, but he deleted and blocked all of them on WhatsApp and on all social media." Sarah, John's ex-wife, also gave a statement. She said, quote, "While I knew that John was in Colombia for the past few months through social media posts, I was not aware of his double life that he was leading. I am deeply saddened for the family of Valentina Trespalacios and for all of those involved in this tragedy. I further request that the privacy of myself and my children are respected as we navigate this process." On Tuesday, January 24th, a vigil was held at the site where Valentina's body was tragically discovered. Friends, family, and just members of the community gathered to honor her memory. They were lighting candles for her and just placing photos of Valentina all around the area. The following day, on Wednesday, January 25th, Valentina's wake took place. Her family had the support of all of their loved ones, and they began preparing to say their final goodbyes to Valentina. The following day, on Thursday, January 26, 2023, Valentina was laid to rest at a cemetery in Bogota. More than 100 people joined to accompany her on her final journey. Friends, family members, and just everyone from the community walked behind the funeral car. During the walk, Valentina's brother, Daniel Felipe, paid a heartfelt tribute to her by playing some of her DJ remixes at full volume. A beautiful and large floral wreath was carried during the procession, and police officers also attended to show their support, standing respectfully outside the chapel with photos of Valentina displayed on their motorcycles. The final goodbye to Valentina was just incredibly hard. The family would never be able to hug her again, to tell her that they love her, to give her a kiss, to see her smile at them, or just see what her life could have been. Her life was just cut too short by John, and her family wasn't going to let her death go unpunished. Valentina's mother, Laura, had to put her own grief on hold to fight for justice for her daughter. For over a year, she actively campaigned to ensure Valentina's case received the attention that it deserved. She organized and participated in large-scale protests outside the prosecutor's office and Bogota's courts, determined to prevent the case from slipping through the cracks or being handled with impunity. There was actually a cash reward of around $5,000 being offered for any information leading to the location of John, since authorities also suspected of John's involvement in Valentina's death. And they actually asked for assistance from Interpol. Police were working really hard on this. They reviewed video surveillance footage from the Airbnb apartment. They held interviews with people who were in contact with John and Valentina's friends. And Valentina's friend, Silvana, actually turned in Valentina's laptop to police, so they were also now going through that. Now, Valentina had left her WhatsApp open on Silvana's computer, so Silvana went straight to the police for them to go through the messages, just to see if anything there was helpful to capture John or just helpful in the investigation in general. general. In those conversations, investigators found a photo that John had sent to Valentina while he was at the airport. And in that photo was John's luggage. And it was the same blue luggage that Valentina was found in. Supposedly, John sent it to Valentina because one of the wheels was broken and he was kind of showing her how it was broken. So with this photo, investigators were able to confirm that the luggage Valentina was found did belong to John. And again, this just kind of further emphasized how John was their person. Now, Silvana was receiving a lot of threats as well. A lot of people felt like she was being a bad friend for like revealing this private information about Valentina's life when all Silvana wanted to do was just help, in any way that she could to catch the person that killed her friend. Not only was Silvana receiving a lot of death threats and just a lot of terrible, terrible hate, but so was Valentina's mom, Laura. She faced a lot of threats and accusations. Some people claim that she lived off of her daughter's earnings or encouraged her lifestyle, and people were just being really nasty to her. So yeah, both Silvana and Laura were dealing with the harassment by the media and on social media while investigations continued. Now, continuing with what police found on the camera surveillance footage, after Valentina was last seen on camera the night of Saturday, January 21st, John wasn't seen on camera until the following morning, Sunday, January 22nd at 9:11 in the morning. And this is when his horrific acts that day began. John was seen leaving the Airbnb with 2 large garbage bags, and then he goes down to the parking garage to place them inside his rental car. Then he goes back up to the Airbnb and then is seen leaving again with 2 suitcases and small bags, this time at 9:15 in the morning. Then after dropping that off, John goes back up to the Airbnb and comes out at 9:21 a.m. with what appears to be random small things such as small bags, some clothes, pairs of shoes, and just like other smaller things. He again goes down to the parking garage to drop that off. Then at 9:50 in the morning, John is seen returning to the Airbnb, this time with a shopping cart. Then at 10:01 a.m., John is seen leaving the Airbnb for the last time, and now he is pushing this like shopping cart which has a couple of things in it. It has a blue luggage and John's backpack. Now, unfortunately, inside that blue luggage that John had arrived with in Colombia was Valentina's body. What happened from 10:43 p.m., the last time that she was seen alive, and 10:01 a.m., we don't really know. Like, what happened to Valentina? There was also a gray blanket that was covering the top of the luggage because Valentina's body didn't like fully fit inside the luggage, so her head and her neck were sticking out, so John put this blanket on top of her to cover it up. It's just truly sick, it's disturbing, it's so tragic, and it's just absolutely inhumane. So John goes back down to the parking garage with the shopping cart and the luggage inside, and he looks around to see if anyone is there or watching him, and then he puts what we believe is his backpack in the trunk, and he takes a few sips of water before he reaches for the luggage and takes it out of the shopping cart. He's kind of like struggling to lift it. It looks like really heavy, so he's trying to like grab it well enough to be able to properly lift it, and once he gets a good grip, he places it in the trunk of his car. He shuts the trunk of his car and places the shopping cart off to the side, and at around 10:06 a.m., he begins to drive out of the parking garage. Now, an important testimony from someone who saw John this morning was from Inés Ayala, the cleaner for the Airbnb. Now, Inés said that she remembers being surprised when John asked her for more time to gather his things before she began cleaning the Airbnb, and she saw him like quickly pack all of his clothes into a shopping cart and take it down to the parking garage. After John left, Inés cleaned the apartment, and she said that things looked kind of like normal. She said that in the bathroom trash cans there was like condom wrappers, and in the kitchen there were sliced lemons. The beds were unmade, but like nothing seemed unusual to her, and the towels were very clean. After this, John is seen through various street video surveillance cameras driving through the city until at 2:48 p.m. in broad daylight, John dumps Valentina's body, which is still inside the luggage, and her belongings inside a dumpster by a park. After this, John threw away Valentina's cell phone. According to testimony from Francisco Diaz, he found her cell phone in a grassy area near the airport. Now, Francisco noticed that the phone had no SIM card, so he took it home to sell it. He initially gave the phone to his friend, who passed it to another individual for inspection with the intent of possibly selling the phone. The person then tampered with the phone, resetting it and erasing all of Valentina's data. Although the phone had a photo of Valentina as the wallpaper, Francisco wouldn't realize it until later when he saw the news of Valentina's death began circulating the media. Valentina's photo was everywhere, and Francisco's wife actually called him, telling him that their daughter realized that the woman in the phone's wallpaper matched the woman appearing in the news. So Francisco managed to get the phone back before it was sold, and he gave it to the authorities, but unfortunately, it was too late. All of the data and information had been wiped and cleaned. So going back to after John threw the phone away, he went to go purchase a new suitcase since his clothes were just like kind of out and about since he had used the suitcase to hide Valentina's body. After this, John went to go return the car that he rented, which was right next to the local airport. According to the worker at the car rental agency, Juan, he said that John contacted the rental company to return the car a day earlier than scheduled. When he returned the vehicle at around 3:30 p.m., Juan said that John appeared sweaty and agitated, but that he didn't really think much of it. Upon inspecting the car, Juan did find a scratch on the rear end of the car, and he charged John around $110 for the damage, which he paid for in cash. Juan also noticed a scratch on John's left cheek. Now, after this, John went on to organize his belongings into a suitcase. He cleaned out the car. He disposed of all the trash, which was like crumbled papers, empty water bottles, and disposable cups. After finalizing the car return, John left for the airport. Around the same time, while Valentina's body was being found, John was literally entering the nearby airport, El Dorado. He purchased 2 plane tickets, one to Panama and another to Sao Paulo, Brazil, as a way to kind of like deter authorities from tracking exactly where he was going. So John made his way through airport security. He made his way to the front gate where he would be flying to Panama, and then from there he was going to be going to Istanbul, and then from there going to his final destination of Montenegro. Now, 2 days later, on January 25th, 2023, at around 2:10 in the morning, John was arrested at the airport in Panama, where he was going to be taking his next flight to Istanbul. His flight was actually scheduled for January 25th at around 10 p.m., but he was detained before he could board the flight. According to immigration, when John's documents were scanned, the Interpol alert that was issued appeared and he was immediately detained. He had roughly $7,000 in cash on him at the time, as well as 15 credit cards. On top of that, he also had a scratch on his cheek and one on his ears. Authorities took him into custody, and 2 days later, John was flown back to Colombia and was formally charged with aggravated femicide in conjunction with the crime of concealment, alteration, or destruction of evidence. Initially, John said that he only fled because he believed that the cartel was going to kill him and blame him for Valentina's death. So yeah, now that John was arrested, it was time to move into the trial. At first, John's defense tried to argue that he didn't mean to kill her, that it was just an accident which happened as a result of excess alcohol and substances. His lawyer was like, this just was an accident and it was just something unfortunate that happened. Now, John even refused to participate in the trial at first. He would actually send notes from prison to like communicate about what his position, I guess, was throughout the trial. And yeah, he didn't want to participate until the judge asked him to. John's defense kept delaying the trial for over a year, first because John's defense lawyer, Martin Riascos, was receiving death threats. Martin was getting so many threats via his cell phone that it got to the point where he was no longer even answering his phone or reading his text messages. Although people have said that this was just another tactic to delay John's trial, Martin said he was only thinking of the safety of his own life. So he resigned and John got a new lawyer. Now, the translator John had, Marta Lucia, ended up quitting as well. She was being criticized because she didn't speak the proper level of English to correctly relay what was going on to John. So a new translator was later appointed. So yeah, there was delays basically because of John's like team. Like they had to get a new lawyer, a new translator, and things like that. So that was happening, and then John's new defense was arguing that his arrest in Panama was illegal, that they placed John in a dark room for over 30 hours, that the handcuffs they placed on him were purple, which again, that color symbolizes violence against women, showing culpability without even a trial starting, and that they were too tight on his wrists and that they really hurt him. And that when he arrived in Colombia, he was in total panic, seeing all of the news stations and cameras waiting for him, that he was denied drug tests to prove he was never under the influence of substances, that the translator was not translating things correctly, so he was really confused, that he wasn't read his rights, that he wasn't allowed a phone call, that the $7,000 in cash that was on him disappeared at the time of his arrest, that he was denied his cholesterol medication, that he was denied his glasses, which he can't see without, and that he lacked representation from the US Embassy. I know, it's a lot. In the end, the judge deemed John's capture as legal and said that he was the one who denied a medical exam in the first place and never told anyone in the moment that the handcuffs were too tight and hurting him. So basically, all of the excuses that his defense were trying to argue were thrown out. Finally, though, in March of this year, John admitted to being involved in Valentina's death. But What was his excuse? Well, he said that it happened during one of their routine practices of asphyxiation during intercourse, and that they were both under the influence of alcohol and substances, and that he doesn't even remember what happened. He claimed that before he met Valentina, he never did any sort of substances, and that he was even kind of hesitant to do it. He also said that the prosecution was withholding testimony regarding Valentina's drug use, that they had videos showing Valentina picking up substances, but that he claimed the prosecution didn't allow witnesses who could testify about her substance use and pressured others to not testify about her addiction. And in his eyes, he's like, this could have helped me in the sense like it would have showed that Valentina pressured me into doing substances, which I never did before, and that made me react terribly and do something that I never would have done in the first place. Again, John said he didn't remember what happened after their rough night because he was just too drunk and high. He said he woke up with his shoes and clothes still on, that he found Valentina lying next to him unresponsive, and that he panicked. His excuse was basically like, it may have been my body doing this, but it wasn't my mind or my intent. And then instead of calling in for help, he stuffed her body into a suitcase, dumped her in a garbage bin, and then fled. Instead of calling for help, being like, oh my gosh, my girlfriend, the person that I'm supposed to marry and spend this new life with, is unresponsive. No, he just decided to flee. He admitted that this was a horrible decision, but said he didn't know what else to do. John went on to claim that he and Valentina were both into rough sex and that the bruises and injuries on Valentina's body were from their usual activities. He said they used to choke each other with things like zip ties during intercourse. He said that they bought them at a hardware store and even tried to use photos proving this and WhatsApp messages to back up his claim, saying that they both did and joked about asphyxiation during sex. He said, quote, there are photos of Valentina dressed in a BDSM outfit. There are even photos of her choking me, and there are WhatsApp chats where we laughed about these asphyxiation practices. We used to joke about how we would choke during sex. But the forensic evidence said otherwise. Valentina's injuries were consistent with brutal violence, not consensual acts. Plus, if they were doing their usual activity of both choking each other, how come only Valentina had evidence of that on her neck? Like, why didn't John have anything like that either? The autopsy showed that she had been hit multiple times and strangled with some type of tie, which completely blocked her airway. John claims that when he woke up and realized that Valentina wasn't breathing, it was at around 7:10 in the morning, and he claims that Valentina still had the plastic zip tie around her neck. He said that he went to the kitchen to grab the knife that Valentina was using to cut limes the night before, and he used the knife to cut the zip tie over her neck. But it was too late. He couldn't find a pulse. He said, quote, I was destroyed. I loved her. Imagine killing someone you love. According to expert witnesses, Juan Sebastian, he explained that while the pressure marks could be made with different objects such as a thin belt or cord, like John was claiming, he believes that John used his hands to strangle Valentina, that the method of suffocation was manual and involved using some sort of binding or tightening method, which could include his hands or a tool or both. But the focus is on the fact that he manually asphyxiated her, which would require the use of his hands. So he used his hands in some way to suffocate her, though it may have also involved other objects. There were 5 deep pressure marks around her neck, along with signs of facial congestion, which is blood pooling in her face, and blood flow from the injuries. Juan ruled out John's claim of an accidental choking happening during intercourse because evidence showed deliberate and violent force. And the prosecution also brought up the fact that Valentina had recently undergone breast augmentation surgery, so being in a very delicate state, why would Valentina agree to the level of aggressiveness John was claiming they had during intercourse? And if they did have rough sex, why was Valentina found with her PJs and her faja on? Now, the faja is like the post-surgery compression undergarment, so why was she still wearing that? That's usually what she slept in, according to her friends, so did John attack her when she was asleep? She had evidence on her body showing she tried fighting for her life while John was strangling her. So, going back to John, he admitted to putting her in the suitcase. John said he panicked and did what he did because he was scared of the Colombian justice system. He said, quote, there's a perception in the United States that justice and the police in Colombia are very corrupt, and I felt that I would not have a fair trial. I was still under the influence of alcohol and substances, but I thought about saving my life. For that reason, I tried to escape. In an interview from behind bars with Canal Focus News, John said, quote, the media and the prosecutor's office are making me out to be a devil, a crazy person. However, I never deliberately harmed anyone. Now, he said that he wasn't allowed to show his own evidence in court, which is why he decided to make this Twitter account with the username Caso Valentina 24, which is run by his friend in the US, and in the Twitter account, he says that he has proof that he wasn't allowed to show during the trial, specifically of Valentina's substance use, and proof that he told her her he didn't do substances before and that it made him react terribly, made him do something that he would never do if he was in the right state of mind. He also uses his Twitter account to share like personal struggles, including his child's battle with cancer and how his marital issues didn't begin until his son was diagnosed with this cancer, and how his wife made him out to be the bad guy. I mean, he's basically playing victim on all of his interviews and on this Twitter account. I mean, he just doesn't really take accountability. He also described his relationship with Valentina and how they truly met. He said that at his work he had some time off, so he went to Tinder and he made it clear that he only wanted to go on vacation with a girl to have fun, and that's how he met Valentina. He said he loved her right away and that she was an amazing woman, but admitted that their relationship was really affected by substances, which ultimately led to this tragic day. John insisted that he didn't plan on murdering Valentina, saying, quote, "In my mind, I don't know where to go. I just wanted to leave this country as soon as possible. The prosecution says everything was planned, but I bought my plane ticket to Panama in cash just hours before. In Panama, I called a friend to see if he could help me. I asked where I could go, and he told me that Montenegro had no extradition. I couldn't find another flight until the next day, so I had to stay in Panama for a few hours, and that's where they caught me." Now, moving over to the prosecution side, they had strong evidence that strongly indicated a deliberate and premeditated act of femicide. They argued that John's controlling behavior towards Valentina escalated into violence, leading to her death by asphyxiation. Valentina's mom, Laura, Valentina's friend, Silvana, and text messages were like key witnesses and key pieces of evidence to corroborate this behavior, as well as testimony from Juan Manuel, who worked at the car rental, who John told that he was in Colombia because his girlfriend was cheating on him, and showed him a picture of Valentina. As for the defense, they were arguing that all of their evidence was unreliable and all of their witnesses were unreliable. They also argued that Santiago's testimony, where he claimed to have traveled with Valentina and to have known her before her death, was unreliable. This is because after his testimony, he basically disappeared because he was later implicated in a separate scandal. He was actually accused of scamming and defrauding dozens of people through a cryptocurrency pyramid scheme. So John's defense was using that in their favor, and we're basically just saying that the prosecution's case lacked concrete evidence, especially regarding the psychological and financial abuse that was supposedly part of the relationship. So the defense was requesting that John be acquitted of femicide. There was a lot of back and forth going on between two sides, but when the final hearing to present final arguments was scheduled on April 17th, 2024, John reported feeling very anxious that day. He claimed to be unwell, and he actually had to be taken to the San Carlos hospital in Bogota for treatment. John had to be taken out of the courthouse on a stretcher and given oxygen during the trip to the hospital. So the final hearing was rescheduled. Finally, after delays and setbacks, sentencing day came. The judge said, quote, "He's not going to say this is a case of involuntary homicide or that it was unintentional. It was murder due to control. His jealousy led him to this, and that's how he punished Valentina, by killing her. It's a matter of common sense, of logic. If you see a young woman unconscious, you would take her to the doctor, but instead he put her in a suitcase and threw her in the trash." He also questioned how he was able to do this without thinking about his children back in the United States. The judge called their relationship toxic. He literally used the word toxic, and pointed out how John was obsessed with her and thought that he had the right to own Valentina, especially because he sent her gifts and money to her and to her family. He took advantage of his larger size and he beat her before strangling her. John was found guilty of his charges and he was sentenced to 42 years and 8 months inside a Colombian prison. He will serve his sentence until 2067, with no special privileges like house arrest or early release. After that, he'll be deported, and he is also prohibited from speaking to Valentina's family for 20 years. Valentina's family felt that justice was served, but John's defense is going to try to appeal this, and they have said that the evidence just wasn't handled properly. For now, finally, Valentina's family could begin healing and begin to move on from this terrible chapter of their lives. They'd have to come to terms that their beloved Valentina was no longer with them, and on top of that, face all of this public scrutiny and just the emotionally tolling trial. Rumors were circulating about Valentina's personal life, including one saying that she was only with him out of self-interest, that she was only with John to get a US visa for money, and that she was unfaithful to him, and they were even saying that she was part of like a scam allegedly involving her and her mom. People were being quite nasty to Valentina, saying that she brought it all upon herself due to the fact that she was using substances, that she was being unfaithful, and that she just kind of deserved this because of her actions. It was a lot for her family to endure, and although the trial is now behind them and they feel justice has been served, they now have to face the rest of their lives with a piece missing from their heart, all because of of John. Valentina's brother Felipe misses her so much. He said, quote, "At 24, I haven't achieved even a fraction of what she accomplished at 21. I loved her smile, I love everything about her, and I miss everything about her." It's just really sad. I hope he has been able to heal from this. Earlier this year in January, Sarah, John's ex-wife, reflected on the anniversary of the day her own life was shattered by John's actions. Now, I'll read a part of it. It's kind of long, so I'll put the rest on the screen, but she put, quote, "Today marks 1 year since those words appeared on my phone. Words that I thought were only part of my nightmares, not a cruel reality. The truth is, you fed me lies and beat me down for so long that I questioned if my reality even existed. When I heard of these unfolding events, my whole perspective shifted. I was right. My fears, my experiences of who you are and what you're capable of were all validated. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I realized that I can trust myself. So for that, thank you. You broke me over and over again. You've inflicted pain not only on me but on our children, a pain so deep that it hurts to even think about. It is just terrible thinking about how John's actions have rippled into so many people's lives and just left them with a terribly deep wound that they had to heal." Now, there have been rumors of there being a Netflix show that will tell Valentina's story. I'm not really sure when that's coming out yet, if the family's working on it or what's going to happen with that, but I will keep you guys posted if a show does come out. There was a book written about her story titled Valentina, Death and Life by Maureen Maya Sierra and Laura Hincapie. I hope I said that right. The book talks about Valentina's life and women all over who are imperfect and very human, who beyond stereotypes seek to move forward and forge a better future for themselves and their loved ones, and how it is not the morality of the victim that should be questioned, it is a perpetrator who should be condemned. Nothing, absolutely nothing justifies a femicide. I will leave the book linked down below if you guys want to check it out, as well as the Instagram page, but I do agree with that statement. I mean, a lot of people feel that Valentina deserved this, that she brought this onto herself by her actions and that if she would have just been like not cheating and things like that, that this wouldn't have happened to her. But at the end of the day, just because she was dating two men at the same time, does that really mean she deserved to be stuffed inside a suitcase in a dumpster? No. Now, what Valentina must have gone through in her final moments is absolutely horrifying and just heartbreaking, and it's really impossible for any of us to imagine it, but I just pray that she is resting peacefully now. I hope her family has been able to cope with her loss in a healing and just healthy manner, and I just wish them nothing but the best. To be placed inside a suitcase and just left inside a dumpster is just so horrifying. I'm going to be including some resources down below on domestic violence and numbers you can contact if you or someone you know needs help. Thank you all so much for being here, for taking the time to listen to today's video. I appreciate you guys so much, and I know this was such a difficult video and just a difficult case to listen to in general. Again, just what happened to her is truly horrifying, and she was just so young. I mean, she was only 21 years old. I would love to know what you guys think about this down below, and yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say for today's video. Thank you guys again so much for being here, and I hope you guys all have an amazing Christmas and an extremely happy New Year. Let me know what you guys are planning to do for the holidays, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, familia.